1999, the final year of the decade, closing out an era filled with some of Hollywood's biggest risks and boldest ideas. From overblown remakes to movies that were simply ahead of their time, 1999 gave us a fascinating collection of cinematic misfires, some of which have aged into cult favorites, while others remain buried in the VHS bargain bins of history. So grab your popcorn and let's take a look back at 10 of the biggest box office bombs of 1999. Number 10, The Mod Squad.
Do perimeter search, all right? Cover me.
With what?
Cover me.
Released March 6, 1999, The Mod Squad tried to bring a late 60s TV classic into the MTV era. Starring Omar Epps, Claire Danes, and Giovanni Ribisi, it followed three minor delinquents who cut a deal to become undercover cops instead of serving jail time. But when their boss, Captain Greer, is murdered, they take justice into their own hands. On paper, it looked like a stylish reboot with a young, edgy cast. But in reality, critics tore it apart, calling it an incoherent jumble of dated source material. And I personally found the film very predictable.
Jesus, dirty cops, drops at the airport. I feel like one of us should say we're getting too old for this shit.
At least it's not going down in an abandoned warehouse.
With an estimated $50 million budget and only $15.4 million at the box office, it became a textbook case of how not to adapt a classic show. And here's a fun bit of trivia. Omar Epps later admitted the film's partnership with Levi's made things awkward on set. The denim jeans were so tight and stiff, he said he could barely move. And once you know that, you really can't unsee it. The trio went on to appear in Levi's ads taken straight from the film, proving that sometimes the only thing tighter than the jeans was the marketing deal.
Out of time, I'ma go for mine and I'ma do it for mine. Go is crazy.
Number 9, Dudley Do-Right. Released August 27th, 1999, Dudley Do-Right tried to bring another Jay Ward cartoon to life. This time starring Brendan Fraser as the well-meaning but hopelessly dim Canadian Mountie. Sarah Jessica Parker played his love interest, Nell Fenwick. And Alfred Molina chewed the scenery as the mustache-twirling villain, Snidely Whiplash.
Absolutely.
The plot? Well, classic cartoon simplicity. Snidely buys up all the land in town, sprinkles fake gold into the river, and sparks a phony gold rush, leaving Dudley to bumble his way towards saving the day. This was Fraser's second Jay Ward adaptation after George of the Jungle. Critics found it too silly even for kids, and audiences just didn't show up. On a $22 million budget, Dudley Do-Right managed only $10 million at the box office. A gold rush that, well, never happened. And here's an interesting what if. Jim Carrey was reportedly considered for the role before turning it down to focus on Man on the Moon, which actually didn't fare much better at the box office anyway. Number 8, The Out-of-Towners.
Let's get to it. oh, Henry. Oh.
Come on, baby.
Released April 2nd, 1999, The Out-of-Towners was a remake of the 1970 Neil Simon comedy of the same name. But this version didn't quite capture the magic. Steve Martin stars as Henry Clark, a man who just lost his job and heads to New York for an interview, joined by his wife Nancy, played by Goldie Hawn. What follows is a chain reaction of chaos, bad luck, and urban mishaps. Basically, planes, trains, and automobiles, minus the charm. Despite two comedy legends leading the way, critics weren't laughing. Roger Ebert bluntly called it not a proud moment in the often inspired careers of Martin and Hawn. About the only bright spot was John Cleese, who stole every scene as the uptight hotel manager, Mr. Marisol. With a $40 million budget and only $28.5 million in returns, the Out-of-Towners ended up stranded without a ticket home. Proof that even comedy royalty can miss their connection. Number 7, Bicentennial Man.
Now jump. No! Out the window.
Released December 17, 1999, Bicentennial Man followed the life and evolution of Andrew, a household robot played by Robin Williams, who begins to develop emotions, creativity, and a longing to be human. It's a story that aimed for heart and humanity, but somehow ended up feeling more mechanical than moving.
Just keeping you on your toes.
I don't have any toes.
You do now.
The film faced major issues before cameras even rolled. Disney originally backed it but pulled out during pre-production due to rising costs. Director Chris Columbus refused to cut $20 million from the budget, insisting that it would compromise his vision. Eventually, Disney struck a deal with Sony to co-finance the movie, but there was no profit to share. With a $100 million budget and only $87 million worldwide, Bicentennial Man became one of 1999's most expensive disappointments. Critics called it dull, uneven, and overly sentimental. A planned sequel, Tricentennial Man, was quietly scrapped, leaving this one to stand alone as a well-intentioned, big-hearted misfire that never quite found its humanity.
Andrew is the oldest living human being in recorded history, for it is by this proclamation that I validate his marriage to Portia Charney and acknowledge his humanity.
Number 6, The Astronaut's Wife.
No. It was an accident. There was an explosion and the satellite...
No! They train for explosions. They train for accidents. They train for hundreds of hours. If something goes wrong, they have a plan. They don't panic. They don't deviate. They stick to the plan. That's what they do. Something happened out there that these two men had not trained for.
Released August 27, 1999, The Astronaut's Wife starred Johnny Depp and Charlize Theron in what was billed as a dark psychological sci-fi thriller. The story follows two astronauts who lose contact with NASA for just 2 minutes during a mission. But when they return to Earth, something feels off. As Theron's character begins to suspect her husband isn't quite human anymore, the film drifts into Rosemary's Baby territory, just with more static and less suspense. Critics weren't kind, calling it aggressively stylish but dramatically flat, and complaining that it moved at a snail's pace, despite all its cosmic ambition. With a $34 million budget and only $10.6 million earned, The Astronaut's Wife crash-landed hard. Even with 2 A-list stars, this one proved that sometimes space isn't the only thing that can feel empty. Number 5, Man on the Moon.
I am from Caspiar.
Caspiar, huh?
It is a very small island in the Caspian Sea. It sunk.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Released December 22nd, 1999, Man on the Moon told the story of Andy Kaufman, one of the most eccentric, unpredictable, and brilliant comedians ever produced. Kaufman blurred the line between joke and reality, leaving critics unsure whether to laugh, cry, or walk out. From wrestling women on stage to reading The Great Gatsby in full, just to annoy a crowd, he was performance art before most people even knew what that meant. Jim Carrey fully disappeared into the role, earning rave reviews and even a Golden Globe for his uncanny portrayal.
Here I come to save the day.
But despite the praise, audiences stayed home. For most moviegoers, Kaufman's strange legacy just didn't connect. I personally enjoyed the film. I never saw it in theaters, but I did watch it on TV several times. Budget estimates vary from $52 to $82 million. But with only $47 million earned worldwide, Man on the Moon became a critical darling and a commercial dud. Ironically, a film about a misunderstood genius ended up being, well, misunderstood.
Thank you for this friendly world. Thank you. And goodbye.
Number 4, My Favorite Martian.
You don't mind my asking, where were you? This alien was trying to kill me!
Don't be such a wet blanket.
Wait a minute. Leave my mother out of this!
Released February 12, 1999, My Favorite Martian was yet another attempt to revive a 1960s TV classic for a new generation. Jeff Daniels stars as Tim O'Hara, a down-on-his-luck TV producer who stumbles upon a real Martian, played by Christopher Lloyd, and thinks he's landed the story of a lifetime. Naturally, things go haywire and the two end up unlikely friends amid a mess of wacky special effects and cartoonish chaos. The film was originally picked up by Warner Brothers, with Martin Short to take the lead. However, the project was scrapped and picked up by Disney. Unfortunately, critics weren't feeling the cosmic vibes. The film was slammed as a loud, effects-ridden comedy with no real humor. Somehow, Disney managed to spend over $65 million bringing it to life, but audiences barely noticed. It earned just $36.8 million worldwide, crashing harder than a UFO in Area 51. Number 3, Mystery Men.
No. We're really taking over.
Released August 6, 1999, Mystery Men was based on the Flaming Carrot comics by Bob Burden and gave us one of the most bizarre superhero teams ever assembled. The film follows a group of wannabe heroes with hilariously unimpressive powers who must step up to save Champion City when its real hero is captured by a criminal mastermind. This cast was stacked. Ben Stiller, Hank Azaria, William H. Macy, Greg Kinnear, Janine Garofalo, Kel Mitchell, and even Paul Rubens as the Spleen. Yeah, his superpowers was exactly what you think.
Oh, shit.
Ooh.
Excuse me.
Universal delayed the film's release to avoid competing with the Blair Witch Project, but it didn't help. Despite decent reviews, audiences just didn't show up. With a budget of $68 million, Mystery Men only brought in $33.5 million, making it a box office dud. Still, time has been kind to this one. Over the years, Mystery Men has gained cult status, proving it might have just been a little too weird and ahead of its time for 1999. Number 2, Virus.
Checkmate.
Released January 15th, 1999, Virus tried to blend sci-fi horror with big-budget spectacle, and the results were, well, disastrous. Based on the Dark Horse comics of the same name, the story follows a crew of scavengers who find a seemingly abandoned Russian research ship after their own vessel is crippled in a typhoon. But things get weird fast when they discover an alien life form has hijacked the ship's computers and is now cranking out killer cyborgs.
You don't recognize me. What's wrong?
The cast was surprisingly solid, featuring Jamie Lee Curtis, Donald Sutherland, and Daniel Baldwin. There was even a line of action figures released to tie in with the movie. Unfortunately, Virus turned out to be a major box office disaster. On a $75 million budget, it earned just $30.7 million worldwide. Critics ripped it apart, calling it derivative and joyless. And even Jamie Lee Curtis herself later called it the worst movie I've ever been in. Number 1, EDtv.
And you see, I can get rid of the Texas accent whenever I want. Or I can just slide real deep on into it like this.
How do you decide?
Well, to tell you the truth, I find that this accent here don't do me no harm with the ladies.
Released March 26, 1999, EDtv was director Ron Howard's attempt to satirize the growing obsession with reality television, a year before shows like Survivor and Big Brother would make it a full-blown cultural phenomenon. The film stars Matthew McConaughey as Ed Pickerney, an average guy who agrees to have his life broadcast live on television 24/7. At first, the fame and the money are fun, but soon Ed's relationships, privacy, and sanity begin to unravel as the cameras refuse to turn away. Despite a solid cast that included Woody Harrelson, Jenna Elfman, Ellen DeGeneres, Martin Landau, and Elizabeth Hurley, audiences just didn't connect with the premise. Many critics said the movie's message was ahead of its time, but it didn't make it any more entertaining. I actually liked the movie. I've seen it several times on TV and understand what Howard was aiming for. Critics compared it to The Truman Show, which was released the previous year. But the films, in my opinion, are two completely different concepts. With a budget of around $80 million, EDtv only brought in $35 million worldwide, making it a major box office disappointment. Ironically, had it been released just a year or two later, it might have been a hit. But instead, it became one of the last big flops of the decade. And that wraps up our look at 1999, a year where the end of the decade brought both brilliance and disaster to the big screen. So which of these flops do you actually enjoy? Were any of them misunderstood, or do they deserve to stay forgotten? Let me know in the comments.